The winter of 1878 was one of the coldest winters the people of the Southwest had seen in years. Deep in the mountains, far away from crowded towns and wealthy ranches, lived an Apache warrior named Kai. To strangers, he looked like a man who had nothing. His clothes were old. His home was small. His hands were rough from years of hunting, building, and protecting others. People saw his empty pockets and decided they knew his whole story. They whispered that Kai was a man without a future. A warrior without a family. A man who had spent too many years alone. He will always live like this, some people said. He has nothing to offer. But they never saw the truth. They never saw the nights when Kai stayed awake guarding his village while others slept safely. They never saw him give away his own food when children were hungry. They never saw him walk for miles through dangerous lands just to bring medicine to someone who needed it. Kai had always been the man who protected others. But nobody protected him from loneliness. For 10 years, Kai had lived without love. 10 years since he had allowed himself to look at a woman and imagine a future. After losing people he cared about, he made a promise to himself. He would stop hoping. Hope only brought pain. So he became stronger. Quieter. More distant. He learned how to survive storms, hunger, and danger. But the one thing he could never defeat was the silence inside his own heart. Every evening, as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Kai would sit beside the fire alone. He watched the flames move and wondered if his life would always be this way. A life of fighting. A life of protecting. A life where nobody truly knew him. Then one day, everything changed. A group of travelers arrived near the valley. Among them was a young woman named Clara. She was the daughter of a respected ranch owner. Her father had money, land, and a powerful name. Everything Kai did not have. Clara had grown up surrounded by comfort, but unlike many people from her world, she did not judge others by what they owned. She looked at people by what was inside them. And that was something Kai had never experienced. Their first meeting happened during a dangerous storm. The sky was dark. The wind was powerful. Rain poured over the mountains. Clara's horse became frightened near a rushing river. The animal pulled suddenly, and Clara lost control. She was moments away from falling into the cold water. Before anyone could reach her, Kai appeared. Like a shadow from the trees. He grabbed the horse's reins and pulled it away from danger. He did not shout. He did not act like a hero. He simply helped. When everything became calm, Clara looked at him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. She expected a cold warrior. A dangerous stranger. But instead, she saw a tired man with kind eyes. "Thank you," Clara said softly. Kai lowered his head. "You are safe. That is enough." Those words surprised her. Most people wanted something in return. Money. Praise. Recognition. But Kai wanted nothing. Clara looked at him carefully. "You always help people without asking for anything." Kai looked away. That is what a person should do. That answer stayed with her. Because she realized something. The man everyone ignored was the man who cared the most. Over the next few days, Clara saw him again. And each time, she noticed something new. He was patient. He was respectful. He was gentle with animals. He listened more than he spoke. The people who called him nothing had never truly seen him. But Clara did. And for the first time in 10 years, Kai felt something he had buried deep inside. A feeling he was afraid to accept. Hope. But hope was dangerous. Because Clara belonged to another world. Her father would never easily accept a poor Apache warrior. A man without wealth. A man without a powerful name. Kai knew the difference between them. He knew the world would say he was not enough. But every time Clara smiled at him, every time she spoke to him like he mattered, the walls around his heart became weaker. He had survived battles. He had survived winters. He had survived years of loneliness. But he was not prepared for someone to finally see him. One evening, Clara reached out and touched his hand while thanking him for helping her family. That simple moment felt impossible. Kai looked at her. For 10 years, he had convinced himself he no longer needed love. But standing there beside her, he realized he was wrong. He knew the risk. He knew the pain that could come. He knew he might never be accepted. But his heart had already started moving toward her. He knew he shouldn't. But he couldn't stop. After that day near the river, Kai tried to convince himself that nothing had changed. He told himself that Clara was only a kind woman who had shown him respect. Nothing more. He reminded himself of the distance between their worlds. She was the daughter of a wealthy ranch owner. He was an Apache warrior who owned almost nothing. She lived surrounded by people. He lived surrounded by mountains and silence. A man like him was not supposed to dream about a woman like her. But the heart does not always listen to reason. And slowly, without either of them realizing it, something began to grow. Clara started visiting the valley more often. At first, she came because she wanted to help. She brought supplies for families who needed them. She carried medicine. She helped repair homes damaged by storms. But every time she arrived, she looked for one person. Kai. She never said it directly. She never made promises. But her eyes always searched for him. And Kai noticed. He tried to stay away. When he saw her walking toward him, he would find an excuse to leave. When she thanked him, he would simply nod. When she smiled, he would look away. Because Kai knew something dangerous was happening. He was beginning to care. One morning, Clara found him repairing a broken fence near the edge of the valley. "You are always working," she said. Kai continued fixing the wood. "There is always something that needs to be done." Clara looked around. "You help everyone." Kai shrugged. "They need help." "And who helps you?" The question stopped him. For a moment, Kai had no answer. Nobody had asked him that before. Finally, he said quietly, "I learned how to handle things alone." Clara looked at him. "That does not mean you were meant to be alone." Those words stayed in his mind for days. Because deep inside, Kai knew she was right. But accepting that truth was frightening. He had spent 10 years building walls around himself. Walls made from pain, loss, and disappointment. Letting someone close meant giving them the power to hurt him. And Kai feared that more than any enemy. As the weeks passed, their friendship became stronger. They talked beside the river. They shared stories beside the fire. Clara told him about her childhood on the ranch. She told him about her dreams. Kai told her about the mountains. About his people. About the lessons he learned from those who came before him. Clara discovered that behind the quiet face was a man full of wisdom. A man who understood loyalty. A man who valued kindness more than gold. And Kai discovered something about Clara. She was not impressed by wealth. She did not care about status. She cared about the person standing in front of her. One evening, they sat beneath the stars. The valley was quiet. The fire between them slowly burned. Clara looked at him. "Why do people misunderstand you?" Kai stared into the flames. "Because they only see what I do not have." "And what do they miss?" Kai was silent for a moment. Then he answered. Everything that cannot be bought. Clara smiled. For the first time in years, Kai felt peace. But that peace came with fear. Because he knew Clara's father would not see him the way she did. Her father measured men differently. He believed a man's worth came from land, money, power. Kai had none of those. He had courage. He had honor. He had a good heart. But would that be enough? Every night, he fought with himself. A part of him wanted to step forward. To tell Clara how he felt. To stop hiding. But another part reminded him. You are not enough. That voice had followed him for years. And it was hard to silence. Still. Clara slowly changed something inside him. She made him believe that maybe his life was not finished. Maybe he was not forgotten. Maybe he was still worthy of love. But love was never simple. Especially when two worlds stood between two people. The valley began to notice their connection. People whispered. Some were surprised. Some were angry. Some believed Kai was reaching for something he could never have. But Kai did not care about the whispers anymore. For 10 years, he had lived afraid of losing something he never had. Now, for the first time, he was afraid of losing something real. One evening, Clara asked him, "Do you ever think about the future?" Kai looked at her. 1,000 thoughts crossed his mind. A home. A family. A life beside her. But he pushed them away. Sometimes. And what do you see? Kai almost answered. But fear stopped him. Because saying it out loud would make it real. And if he lost her, it would hurt more than being alone. So he only said, "I do not know." Clara smiled gently. "Maybe one day you will." Those words followed him through the night. Because Kai knew something had changed. He was no longer fighting loneliness. Now he was fighting fear. Something was growing. But it was risky. For many weeks, Kai tried to fight the feeling growing inside him. He tried to convince himself that staying silent was safer. A warrior could survive hunger. A warrior could survive cold nights. A warrior could survive battles. But love was different. Love required something Kai had not given anyone in 10 years. It required him to open his heart. And opening his heart meant accepting the possibility of losing everything. Every time Clara smiled at him, Kai felt the same question in his mind. What if she is the one person who truly sees me? But another voice answered. What if you are not enough? That thought followed him everywhere. He remembered the people who laughed at him. He remembered the whispers. The judgment. The way they looked at his old clothes and empty hands. They never saw his courage. They never saw his sacrifices. They only saw what he lacked. But Clara saw something different. She saw the man behind the struggle. And that gave Kai the courage to make a decision. One morning, before the sun rose above the mountains, Kai prepared himself. He cleaned his clothes. He stood taller. And he walked toward the ranch. Toward Clara's father. Thomas. The moment Kai entered the ranch, everyone noticed him. A quiet Apache warrior standing in the home of one of the richest men in the valley. People stopped talking. They watched. They waited. Because they knew something important was about to happen. Thomas looked at Kai. He was a powerful man. A man respected by many. He had built his ranch through years of hard work and believed a man's responsibility was to provide security. What brings you here? Thomas asked. Kai stood calmly. I came to speak honestly. Thomas watched him carefully. Kai took a breath. I want to ask for your daughter's hand. The room became silent. For a moment, nobody moved. Clara looked at Kai. She already knew how much courage it took for him to say those words. Because Kai was not only asking for permission. He was risking his pride. His heart. His future. Thomas looked at him for a long moment. Then he looked at his daughter. Then back at Kai. You. Kai nodded. Yes. Thomas slowly stood. You believe you can give my daughter the life she deserves? Kai answered. I will do everything I can. Thomas looked at him. That is not what I asked. The room became tense. You have no land. No. You have no wealth. No. You have no powerful family name. No. Thomas stepped closer. Then what do you have? Kai did not look away. My word. For a second, everyone was quiet. Because many men would have lowered their heads. Many men would have walked away. But Kai stayed. He knew he had nothing to hide behind. No money. No title. No influence. Only his character. Thomas walked around the room slowly. The answer he wanted was not about love. It was about whether Kai understood responsibility. Finally, Thomas spoke. If you truly believe you are ready to stand beside my daughter. Kai listened. Then prove it. Clara looked worried. Father. But Thomas raised his hand. This is not about hurting him. He looked at Kai. It is about knowing if his words are real. Then Thomas gave the challenge. You will leave this valley. The room froze. Kai remained still. You will spend the winter alone. Thomas continued. You will build something with your own hands. You will help others even when nobody rewards you. You will return when the snow melts. And then we will decide. Kai understood. This was not a simple task. Winter in the mountains could kill a person. Many strong men had failed. Many experienced hunters had disappeared. Thomas was asking Kai to prove himself in the hardest way possible. Not through fighting. Not through strength. Through patience. Through sacrifice. Through character. Clara looked at Kai. Fear filled her eyes. She knew the danger. She knew what her father was asking. But she also knew something else. Kai had spent his entire life proving himself. And he would never walk away from a challenge. That evening, Clara found him near the river. You do not have to do this, she said softly. Kai looked at the water. Yes, I do. Why? He was quiet for a moment. Then he answered. Because for 10 years, I believed I was not enough. He looked at her. I need to know the truth. Clara's eyes filled with emotion. And if you fail? Kai smiled slightly. Then I will fail knowing I tried. The next morning, Kai left the valley. No celebration. No promise that Clara would wait. No guarantee that Thomas would accept him. No certainty that he would survive. Only a path covered in snow. Only a difficult journey ahead. And one thing in his heart. He would prove himself. No promise. No guarantee. Just the test. The first morning after leaving the valley, Kai woke up alone. There was no warm home waiting for him. No familiar voices. No Clara standing nearby. Only the freezing wind of the mountains. The test had begun. Thomas had not asked him to return with gold. He had not asked him to return with a larger house or a powerful name. He wanted to know one thing. Was Kai truly a man who could carry responsibility? Or was he only a warrior who knew how to survive? Kai understood the difference. Survival was about staying alive. But becoming a leader was about helping others live. So he walked deeper into the wilderness. The snow covered the ground. The nights became colder. The food became harder to find. Many men would have turned back. But Kai continued. Every morning before the sun appeared, he worked. He cut wood. He repaired old shelters. He hunted carefully. He collected supplies. He built a small cabin with his own hands. It was not large. It was not beautiful. But it was proof. Proof that even with nothing, a person could create something. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And the people watching from the valley began to wonder. They expected Kai to return quickly. They expected him to admit defeat. But he did not. He stayed. He worked. He endured. Hard work in silence. That became his answer. One afternoon, a heavy storm came through the mountains. The wind was so powerful that even experienced travelers struggled. During the storm, Kai heard something unusual. A cry. Someone was trapped. He followed the sound and discovered a young boy lying near a broken wagon. The boy's name was Eli. He was scared, cold, and alone. Kai immediately helped him. The boy looked up. "Are you going to leave me here?" Kai shook his head. "No. But you are alone too." Kai looked at him. Being alone does not mean we stop helping others. Those words changed the boy. Kai carried Eli back to his shelter. He gave him food. He gave him warmth. And instead of sending him away when the storm ended, Kai taught him. He taught him how to survive. How to read tracks. How to build a fire. How to stay calm when fear took control. At first, Eli was weak and afraid. He believed he could not do anything. "I am not strong like you," the boy said one night. Kai looked at him. "Strength is not something you are born with." "Then what is it?" "It is something you build when life becomes difficult." Those words were not only for Eli. They were for Kai too. Because deep inside, Kai was fighting his own battle. Some nights, when the fire became small and the wind surrounded the cabin, he thought about Clara. He wondered if she still believed in him. He wondered if she had moved on. He wondered if Thomas had already decided he would never be accepted. There were moments when giving up seemed easier. Moments when the cold felt too heavy. Moments when the silence reminded him of the 10 lonely years before Clara arrived. But every morning, he stood up again. Because he remembered why he started. Not only for love. For himself. He needed to know that he was more than what people saw. More than old clothes. More than a poor warrior. More than a man without wealth. As winter continued, something unexpected happened. People from nearby settlements began coming to Kai. Not because he was rich. Not because he had power. Because they trusted him. A farmer needed help repairing a fence. Kai helped. A family needed firewood. Kai brought it. A traveler lost his way. Kai guided him home. Slowly, the same people who once ignored him began telling different stories. They no longer said, "He has nothing." They started saying, "He is the man who always shows up. He is the man who helps without asking. He is the man you want beside you when times are hard." Kai did not hear these words. He did not need to. Respect was never the reason he helped. That was the difference. He was not trying to impress anyone. He was becoming the person he always wanted to be. By the end of winter, Kai had lost weight. His hands were rougher. His clothes were more worn. He had gained no fortune. No gold. No land. But something inside him had changed. He had learned patience. He had learned leadership. He had learned that a true man does not prove himself by what he owns. He proves himself by what he does when nobody is watching. Then one morning, as the snow began to melt, Kai looked toward the valley. The test was ending. Soon, he would return. But he did not know what waited for him. Would Thomas accept him? Would Clara still feel the same? Would all his sacrifice mean anything? There was no guarantee. Only a journey back home. And the hope that the man who left the valley was not the same man who would return. Will he finally earn the respect he spent his whole life searching for? The first signs of spring appeared slowly across the mountains. The snow began to disappear. The frozen rivers started moving again. And after months of silence, Kai finally walked back toward the valley. But he did not return the way people expected. There was no grand entrance. No group of horses following behind him. No bags filled with gold. No proof of wealth. Kai walked alone. His clothes were still simple. His boots were worn. His face showed the struggle of the winter. Anyone looking only at the surface would think the test had broken him. But they would have been wrong. Because the man who left the valley was not the same man who came back. When Kai entered the village, people noticed something different. Before, he walked like a man carrying the weight of the world. Now, he walked with peace. He had discovered something important. A person's value was not decided by what others gave them. It was decided by what they carried inside. The people who once whispered about him watched quietly. They remembered the man they called not enough. The poor warrior. The man without land. The man without a future. But now they saw something they could not ignore. They saw respect. They saw confidence. They saw a man who had faced the hardest season alone and returned stronger. News of his arrival reached Thomas quickly. The ranch owner stood outside his home, waiting. Clara stood nearby. Her heart was full of emotions. She was happy he was alive. Proud of what he had done. But she also knew the final decision belonged to her father. Kai approached. For a moment, nobody spoke. Thomas looked at him carefully. Then he asked. "Did you complete the challenge?" Kai nodded. "Yes." Thomas looked at his empty hands. "You came back with nothing." Kai looked down at his hands. Then he smiled. "I came back with what I needed." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "And what is that?" Kai answered. "Understanding." The people around them listened. Kai continued. "I thought I had to prove I was worthy by becoming something bigger. But I learned that a person's worth is not measured by what he owns. It is measured by what he does when nobody is watching." Thomas remained silent. He expected Kai to return with something impressive. A new home. A successful business. A collection of wealth. But Kai brought back something more difficult to earn. Character. During the winter, Thomas had received reports. He knew about the families Kai helped. He knew about the boy named Eli. He knew Kai shared food when he had little. He knew Kai worked without asking for praise. Thomas had been watching the entire time. And slowly, he understood. This was the test. Not the cold. Not the mountains. Not the survival. The real test was whether Kai would continue being a good man when there was nothing to gain. And he had passed. But Thomas did not celebrate. He did not give a dramatic speech. He did not suddenly become a different man. Instead, he stepped forward. He placed a hand on Kai's shoulder. A small gesture. But everyone understood what it meant. It was not a gift. It was not pity. It was respect. Earned respect. For the first time, Thomas saw Kai not as a poor Apache warrior. He saw him as a man. A man who could protect. A man who could lead. A man who could stand beside his daughter. Clara watched the moment quietly. She knew the journey had changed Kai. But she also knew something else. Kai had not changed to impress her father. He had changed because he finally understood his own worth. Later that evening, Clara found Kai near the same river where they first met. The water moved gently. The mountains stood quietly behind them. The same place where a lonely warrior once believed he would always be alone. Clara smiled. You came back. Kai looked at her. Yes. Was it difficult? Kai looked toward the mountains. There were many moments I wanted to give up. Why didn't you? Kai smiled softly. Because someone believed I was more than what people saw. Clara looked at him. And now? Kai took a breath. Now I believe it too. For 10 years, Kai had waited for someone to see his value. But the greatest change happened when he finally saw it himself. The test was over. But the journey had only begun. Because soon, the warrior who had spent years alone would finally discover what he had always wanted. A place to belong. And a person to call home. The valley had never looked more beautiful. The same mountains that once witnessed Kai's loneliness now surrounded a new beginning. Years ago, he had walked through this land as a man who believed he would always be alone. A man who had accepted silence. A man who thought love was something meant for other people. But everything changed the day Clara saw the person hidden behind the struggle. She did not see his old clothes. She did not see his lack of wealth. She did not see what the world said he was missing. She saw Kai. The man. The protector. The warrior with a gentle heart. After the winter test ended, life slowly changed. Kai and Clara built their future together. It was not a life filled with luxury. It was not a life of endless riches. But it was a life built on something stronger. Trust. Respect. And love earned through time. They built a home near the valley. A simple home. A warm home. A place where children laughed. A place where people gathered. A place where nobody was judged by what they owned. Kai became the kind of leader people remembered. Not because he demanded respect. Because he gave it first. The young boy he helped during the winter, Eli, grew into a strong young man. And he never forgot the lessons Kai taught him. One evening, years later, Eli asked, "How did you become so respected?" Kai smiled. "I did not chase respect." "Then how did you find it?" Kai looked toward the mountains. "I earned it by doing what was right when nobody was watching." Those words became the lesson passed from one generation to another. Because Kai's greatest victory was not defeating an enemy. It was defeating the belief that he was not enough. One evening, Kai and Clara returned to the river where they first met. The water moved peacefully. The wind carried the same mountain air. Clara looked at him and smiled. "Do you remember this place?" Kai looked around. "How could I forget? This is where everything changed." Kai laughed softly. "No." Clara looked surprised. "No." Kai shook his head. "This is where I met you." He looked at the river. But the moment everything changed was later. When? Kai looked at her. "When I decided to try, even when I had no guarantee." Clara understood. Because that was the truth. The greatest moment of Kai's life was not when Thomas accepted him. It was not when people respected him. It was not even when he found love. The greatest moment was when he stood at the beginning of the impossible journey and said, yes. Yes to the challenge. Yes to the struggle. Yes to proving himself. Even when nobody promised him success. Even when failure was possible. Even when the road ahead was painful. That was what made him different. Because anyone can be strong when victory is certain. But true character appears when a person chooses to continue without knowing the ending. Kai spent 10 years believing he had lost his chance at happiness. But sometimes life delays the reward because it is preparing the person. The lonely warrior became a husband. The forgotten man became a respected leader. The man who had nothing became the man who gave everything. And the people who once said, "He is not enough," were the same people who later said, "There is no one stronger." Because they finally understood. A person is not measured by wealth. A person is not measured by status. A person is measured by character. Respect is not demanded. It is earned through action. And sometimes the most important decision in life is the one made when there is no guarantee. When the road is difficult. When nobody is cheering. When the result is unknown. That is when a person discovers who they truly are. And for Kai, the most important moment was simple. He said yes. Before the reward. Before the acceptance. Before the promise. He said yes. And that choice changed everything. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. Where are you watching from? And if you enjoyed this journey of courage, love, and redemption, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more emotional stories.